Sudafed and clear your throat. It's the Woodworking Morning Show.
You think people are used to us being late, that no one is here on time?
We're usually the ish of the 9:30-ish.
9:30-ish. Okay, well, hey, I'm going to thumbs down you guys for not being here. What's wrong with you? Yeah, well, good morning, everybody. It is the Woodworking Morning Show.
I feel like squished.
No, you're perfect right where you are.
Is that what happened? Oh.
See?
Oh, okay.
I stand here, you sit there. That's how it works. So good morning, everybody. I'm Mark.
And I'm Nicole.
And we are your tour guides on this tour
Yes.
of the world of woodworking.
Yes, and see, my mug even says who I am.
Oh, speaking of mugs, it's going to be a bad morning for the throat. I just got to warn you ahead of time. Anyone have one of these? You guys
That's
recognize
old.
this? This is old school Rockler right here. Rockler used to sell these router coffee mugs. And I have had this thing for ages. And I saw it in the laundry room because it's not like in my regular mug circulation. Because look at it. It's all big and wonky. But I took it out of the cabinet, washed it up, and I'm like, this is going to be a good Friday show thingy.
You have tried over the years. So I got this for you when we lived in California. And over the years, he's tried to get me to like get rid of it. I'm like, no, I'm not getting rid of this. And so I usually would just kind of put it in a cabinet or whatever.
I gotta tell you, something looks like it's wrong with notifications. We have an incredibly low number of people watching.
They just don't like us anymore.
And low number of people in the chat, which is not typical. So something must be weird.
What did you pick when you went live?
I picked the correct one for the morning show.
All right, weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyone know what's going on? Did anybody get a notification or
Let's see.
what the heck is going on
I'll let you
here?
know if I got it.
But normally at this point in the show, to only have 3 people watching, something's wrong, Nicole.
No. Yeah, I didn't get a notification.
Check the Patreon thing. See if it's if I do have the correct embed.
Yeah, let's hope.
I mean, I know I picked the right one. I'm just wondering if something is whacked out. Bear with us. You know how this stuff goes. But
Let's
something's
see.
definitely wrong with
This one right here is the show. Yeah, there it goes. Hey, that's the show.
Okay, well, whether one person is watching or 100 people are watching, we'll do the show anyway because we don't care. I mean, we care, but we do it because we love it.
Well, the weird thing is, it says, I see the live stream offline. He says, no, do you see us? We're live. The weird thing is, I think a lot of people go to the live page, and for whatever reason, it does not show up on the live page now. I don't know. I don't know, YouTube.
It is what it is. I guess we're just going to do the show, right?
Yeah, let's just do the show.
Okay, so if you didn't see the names on the little title card there, we want to thank some people who helped us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/woodwhisperer. Charles McCready, Don's Woodies, Nathan Terapaki, and Neil Newman.
Yay,
So thank you so much for helping us out. You like these nice short lists of names now? It was a little out of control for a while. Yeah, Robert Murray says the link in Patreon is good.
Yeah, I just redirected everybody from the live, the default live page.
So it's just not sharing an event to the default live page.
For whatever reason.
That's just goofy. Well, I'm sorry, folks, if that's happening.
It also says it's unlisted. Why does it say unlisted? That might be my problem.
Oh, so this is Nicole's fault. I understand now.
Oh no.
Okay, so when it launched, no one got the notification because it's unlisted.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, should we just continue, or is there
let's just.
Is there anything we can do?
I'm gonna unlist it, and we'll see what happens.
Or you're gonna make it public.
Yes.
Wow, good start.
I don't know why. I copied defaults.
Maybe you copied the one we just used for the guild meeting.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, I'm just gonna start answering questions
Weird.
because that's what we're here to do.
Public. Boom.
First question
Publish.
here is from Paul Engel. He says, I'm planning on adding an air quality monitor to my shop so I'll know when it's safe to stop using my face mask and turn off my air filter. The ones I've heard the most positive reviews about are the Dylos. The basic model of the DC1000 measures down to 2.5 microns. The added feature on the Pro model goes down to 5 microns. Will the extra 2 microns be value to my shop? Any ideas on a reference that will tell you the size of most shop-borne particles? Well, I have I think I've got the Pro model, the DC1100. That's this bad boy right here. I'm going to turn this on. It takes a little while for it to ramp up and start reading accurately, but you'll hear that? That's a little fan going. And what it's going to do is give us 2 numbers. The reading on the left is a small particle number. Can't remember exactly what the range is. And the one on the right is a larger particle number. And this is something that I use as a tool, just as Paul said, to kind of decide when it's safe to take a respirator off, just to kind of have an idea what the condition of the shop air is at that time.
So which one is it? There's laser air.
Well, that's what we're talking about. So he's
it?
got the DC 1100, that's $199.
Yeah.
And then the Pro,
Whew.
I don't know, it's confusing. That's $260.
That's why I'm asking you, because this
that one's battery operated. We don't need
Yeah,
that
we
one.
don't
That's
need-
really expensive.
Yeah.
It's like $200. Anyway, let's answer this question. So the question is, what are the particle sizes, and do we need to go down all the way below, what is the number he said? Down below 2.5 microns. So I found some mixed information on this. There didn't seem to be a very simple definitive resource, but here's what I found. First of all, when I use my dust mask, that's the one with the pink particulate filters, that guy goes down to 0.3 microns, which is probably lower than we really need for wood dust. But the question is, what about that little gap that he mentioned? Let's see, this other one says, forget about the large chips and visible sawdust. Perhaps the most damaging element is the invisible fine dust, sometimes called coarse inhalable particles ranging from 2 to 10 microns, right? So there is something that says it is, maybe there's an argument to say we should look below 2.5. So if you want that Pro model, maybe it's not, a bad thing to get that. In my opinion, though, when we're just looking at general conditions of the air, I don't know that you need that Pro model. And the reason is because we are really worried about most fine dust being 10 microns and smaller. That one will detect that down to, I guess he said 2.5. I think if you know that 2.5 dust is there, you could assume that the smaller stuff is there too, right? So just because it detects that small, I feel like it's close enough with the regular meter to just give you a general sense of how clean the air is. Whether you're getting those last 2.5 micron size ranges, even though those are the most dangerous, my point is if the dust shows that you have dust in the air, if the number shows you have dust in the air and you run the whole thing and you sort of clean the shop up, excuse me, Nicole. Chances are, if you've run those filters and you've cleaned up the 3, 4, 5 micron dust particles, you're probably cleaning the ones a little bit below that too. All that said, I have the one that goes even lower because I'm a little paranoid about this stuff, but I'm trying to be a little more realistic for like normal people, unlike me. But I honestly think it's just you can assume that you have cleaned the air to that point if the other particles, the slightly larger particles, are gone too. But keep in mind, that's the thing with dust collection. It's those tiny, tiny particles that are the most dangerous.
Someone last week had asked a question, and I didn't get a chance because we ran out of time, was talking about the jet air filtration and was asking if that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you did. What?
Well, I don't have the jet anymore. I've got the 2 Powermatic electrostatic versions.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's always a good idea to run those things.
Yeah, you have it.
Just to keep the shop air as clean as possible. So this is a great tool. It may seem a little bit overkill. It's like $200, but it might even be one of those things. Like we should buy a unit for the guild and then mail it out to different people. The problem is it's a pretty sensitive tool and is easy to break.
Yeah.
So the idea being though, it really teaches you what works in your shop and what doesn't, how long you need to run certain things like air cleaners, or what happens when you open the window. How does that impact air quality? You can learn a lot in just a couple of weeks of using it, and then you don't necessarily need to use it every time and micromanage this stuff. You'll have a general sense for how effective your dust collection and your air cleaners are.
So if you head on over to amazon.com/shop/The Wood Whisperer, I have a category called Friday Live, and I added the Dylos to there. And any purchases you make through the store sends a few pennies our way.
I'm looking at the number now. We're like, we started the show with 3 people. We're like, well, okay, I guess this is it.
I guess
we're going to start.
And this is, somebody asked the model. It's DC.
The one I have is the DC 1100.
1100.
And there's a DC 1000.
Yeah, I can't get the link.
But there's ones for like battery, looks like they have a battery model, things like, I mean, a lot of that stuff you're not really going to need to worry about.
Weird.
Here's another thing, just as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
There's always questions about how accurate these things are. When you're looking at these numbers, I'm not using these numbers to tell me a specific particle count that I'm going to use in a scientific article and publish, right? What I look for is relative numbers. So after I run my air cleaners overnight and I start first thing in the morning, I fire this guy up and I look at those numbers. That's my base level. That's going to tell me the shop is as clean as it can get. That's how low that number can get. Then once things start to pick up, all I know is that number's going up and I know I can get it back down lower, right? It's just giving you relative numbers to work from, not absolute numbers. So even if it's not accurate, it's still very, very helpful for folks like us. Enough about air cleaners and Dylos. Gordon White asked, please, can you explain your review on finish sanding routine, especially after random orbit sand or grits 180 or 120? I try to do at least one pass with the grain, not rotary, to get into the corners, but he says by hand that's slow and painful. Do you go directly to hand sanding or power finish sander like the Festool RTS, DTS models? Do they have a straightforward and forward and back option in going with the grain? Okay, I read that in the most confusing way possible. Sanding,
you sound like me.
And sanding is one of those things. There are some people who will really geek out about this, and they're very specific. Like they've been burned by swirl marks in the past, and you see it when you apply finish, and you go, oh, so you make sure that never happens to you again. These are folks who are going to very carefully sand through all the grits, maybe with a random orbit sander. And then on that final grit, they're going to go with a sanding block with the grain and make good, consistent passes and maybe even count their passes to make sure they are getting all those little swirl marks out of there. I do that sometimes, but not often. Most of the time I find, and this could be sander dependent, maybe a less expensive, cheaper model sander maybe has a little more vibration, so you might get more tendency for swirl marks. I can tell you just with my experience with the ETS sanders in Festool's line, they're pretty darn good sanders. So when I go through the grits, by the time I get to 180, I can no longer really see scratch patterns. From that point, if I want to jump to 220, that's certainly an option, but by the time I go to 220, I really can't see anything. And if I wipe the surface down, maybe with a little bit of, like a damp rag or mineral spirits or something, and I sort of really closely look at what's going on the surface, I usually can't see anything. And that's my cue to say that I don't need to do anything more than that. If I do anything more, I mean, it's good to be sure that it's perfect, but generally speaking, I don't have to do that, right? Now, if you do have a situation where you're seeing these scratch patterns appear at those finer grits, it could mean that you're not spending enough time on the lower grits, right? The goal of each grit is to get rid of the scratch marks from the grit before. So if you don't spend enough time at the 120, the 150, the 180, you may wind up carrying those scratches through, and now your 220 can't get those scratches out unless you sand really aggressively for a long time. So it's a matter of spending a lot of time at those grits. But again, an unbalanced sander, putting too much pressure, using sandpaper that's clogged up or maybe has a little dust particle on it or a chip of wood, like these are all things that can actually create big problems for you. So it's never a bad idea to hand sand and just kind of go over that surface as a last step with the grain if you are seeing problems. Hopefully you can get equipment and sandpaper that works well enough that you don't have to do that.
We got a super chat here from Peter Dunphy.
Dunphy, yes.
Right, Peter, if you had a question, you didn't put it in the chat, but let me know. And then we got a nice super chat from Triple J Customs Jose.
Jose.
Hola, Spags, I'm back.
What's going on, Jose? How you doing? Actually, someone just brought up a question, or I made a point that I showed in the recent Rubio application video. Even if you don't care about Rubio, watch that because the finish preparation stuff is relevant to what we're talking about here. Stumptown mentions the pencil marks All right, so the pencil mark trick is basically taking a pencil, lightly going over the surface, the entire surface. Use that as your gauge. So if you don't know when to switch from one grit to another, start sanding, right, with those pencil marks there. Once the pencil marks are completely gone and you go a little bit more, now you know you have thoroughly sanded with that grit, pencil marks are gone, change to the next grit, put more pencil marks on there. I use that every single time I switch grits because it just gives me two things. It's like a timer. It tells me when it's time to go to the next grit. It also tells me where I've sanded and where I haven't. So sanding evenly over a big surface is always a big deal. With those pencil marks, now I can see the spots. Okay, I've definitely sanded enough there. Let me make sure I just get everything evenly.
I just want to say and give a big shout out to Bill Ockard in the chat. He just got laid off this morning.
Oh, Bill.
So
sorry,
I know
man.
Bill's not the only one. So if you're watching this and you're going through this crazy layoff process,
I was listening to this morning.
I just wanted to express my heartfelt
Sympathies. Empathy.
like he said they're fine, but it still changes your whole routine.
I was listening to the Made for Profit podcast this morning, and they had a show about woodworking businesses, what you can do to kind of stay afloat.
Weather the storm.
Yeah, to weather the storm, how to get aggressive about this stuff. It was a good show, but it had me thinking about this. And another thing that crossed my mind is a lot of the guild instructors.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily go for content creators. Like right now, there's a little bit of a grace period for people who make a living by making content where they're okay, right? Because there's still AdSense revenue coming in.
Right.
Now that is something that even for content producers may be drying up, right? Sponsors, tool companies, these companies are getting hit hard, and there's probably a lot of people who are counting on all those, not just the tools to review, but money, cash that's coming in. That's going to stop, right? Because everybody's getting hit hard. But the guild instructors, a lot of them are not content producers.
Right.
These are people who are building for clients who are probably getting hosed, right? Because they're, if you're talking about high-end furniture, who are we talking about here? People who probably have stock investments.
Sure.
And guess what? They're not happy right now.
Yeah.
So what's the first thing to go? Luxury items. And then you got people like Philip Morley and Jory, and Daryl Peart, people who make custom furniture for a living who are probably going to be in trouble here pretty soon. So I don't know.
If you're interested in any of those projects,
yeah, I guess if you were ever interested, now's a real good time.
we're getting ready. We pay them quarterly.
So we got a couple more days before the quarter's up and I have to issue checks. Sure, yeah, I guess. That's it. That's one way to kind of help some people you probably know in the industry who might be hurting right now.
Jeremy Spence, Nicole, heartfelt mention of a guy who got laid off. Mark, I listened to a podcast.
What? That is relevant to the conversation.
I know, but it's just the way his frame would crack me up.
I thought you were done talking.
You always think that.
Yeah,
just like I think the same.
You must
with
be done. You must be done now because I'm going to talk. What question was I on?
Who knows?
Okay, so this is from Jeremy Long. He says, "Hey, Mark and Nicole, have y'all ever given any thoughts to hosting your own in-person guild gatherings like demonstrations or seminars? It'd be nice to actually meet other guild members." Clearly, this is a post-coronavirus question.
Yes.
Yeah, we've done meetups, locally.
We've done some Denver meetups.
But as far as demonstrations and things like that, it's hard to do. It's hard for me to do because it's a really big time sink. It's something I'd have to prepare for, put time into the actual preparation, then the day of the event. And my shop is my house. So inviting a bunch of strangers over into my shop is usually not
cool with me usually.
Yeah, it's usually not something that Nicole wants me to do. So anything local tends to be like, I've done demos at a demo, I should say, at the local Denver Woodworkers Association, I think it's called. Or is it Colorado Woodworkers Association? Anyway, the local woodworking association.
Guild.
So they have meetings at the Rockler store, so I've done a presentation there. That's probably going to be the extent of it for a while, only because when your shop is attached to your house, just having people come over is a little bit of a liability that we don't like to do. So there's that. Okay. So Corey, he's planning to build a small bookcase for a friend's baby shower gift. I have a ton of walnut shorts I got from a moving sale, and I'm wondering if there's any issue in building the whole case out of solid wood versus plywood, since I have the stock. No problem at all. Bookcases can absolutely be made of solid wood. You got to think of a bookcase as, certain components are going to be problematic and certain ones aren't. So when you're talking about your top, your sides, your bottom, all of that, grain direction is going the right way, it's all going to expand and contract front to back. The only place you can run into a problem with a solid wood case is like basically the back panel, because the back panel is now restricted between the sides. So what do you do there? Well, you either put a piece of 1/4-inch plywood back there. If you don't have the ply, then you go old school and you do like shiplap, right? So that's where you have boards that are kind of rabbeted, and the rabbets overlap one another, and then this way each board gets secured, but each board also has a little bit of room to breathe. And even though they have room to breathe, the rabbets are overlapping, so there's no visual gap. But that's a classic way to secure the back of a cabinet or the back of a bookcase in this case. So no problems at all using solid wood as long as you follow traditional wood movement rules. Okay, I've got more here, 2 more.
Yeah, more than that.
Well, I was up at like 5:30 and I picked the questions at 5:30.
What got you up at 5:30?
I was up when Ava cried.
Oh.
And then after she cried, I was really up.
Yeah.
So then I just got up.
Me, I'm like, I'm like, just go back to bed.
Go back to bed.
Yeah. I crawl in with her and I fall asleep.
Sleepy time.
Yeah.
Tony Tang says, hey Mark, does there exist such a thing as a good jigsaw or jigsaw blade? I got crazy tear out today from my DeWalt jigsaw and my new Bosch blade. And I tried blue tape, adding a backer board, and nothing worked. Part of the problem with the jigsaw is just by nature, it's a rough cutting tool.
Yeah.
It's like, it's aggressive, it's jumpy. A lot of the teeth are pretty aggressive. So sometimes I've even used like a metal cutting blade if I'm cutting plywood, right? The metal cutting blades have those really teeny tiny teeth and you gotta go slow, and it's not something you're gonna do a lot of, but if it's a real sensitive cut and it's the only tool you could use to do it, sometimes that can work. You can also get, I'm sure Bosch has these, I know Festool branded blades come in very high tooth counts, very fine teeth. That's what you want. If you see big chunky teeth on there, yeah, it's an aggressive blade, and that's going to tear the crap out of anything you're cutting, especially if you go cross grain or you're using plywood. So keep in mind though that this tool is just not really intended for fine cuts. So anytime I use a jigsaw, I kind of in the back of my mind know that I'm going to lose like a good 1/4 inch off of whatever I'm cutting just to recover from the tear out. But look around, there are blades that have a very fine tooth structure that will give you a better result. Now there could be something with the saw too. Sometimes if the saw just has a lot of, it's jumpy and chattery, maybe there's an issue there. Check the settings on the saw. There are usually settings where you can kind of vary the approach of the blade that can make it more or less aggressive. Go for the less aggressive option. But other than that, it's just not really a tool that's meant for fine cuts. Though the better ones can accomplish decent cuts with the right blade.
I got a super chat from...
Okay.
I gotta refresh it. Sorry. I got multiple. Timothy Harris. What are the basic rules for mortise and tenon joints? Depth of mortise and width of tenon? Mark made an offhand comment about following them last show. Don't we have a video for that?
No. Well,
I thought you did a live. We did it
okay.
Back in Arizona, we did a live.
A long time ago, I think I did do something on just basic mortise and tenon joints.
Yeah.
It's an early video.
It was a double mortise and tenon.
No, that's a different thing.
Oh,
I did a double mortise and tenon joint, but that was not a mortise and tenon rules.
Gotcha.
So here's 2 things. I don't remember these numbers. I never remember them off the top of my head. I did talk about it in my book, Essential Joinery. We covered the details in there. The approach I took there was a little bit more of my current, obviously, because it was a recent book, my current way of thinking about this. Some of these rules don't always apply. You have to, the rules kind of are based on a certain set of conditions. Well, sometimes those conditions aren't there. So you have to know, okay, this is what we're shooting for, but adjust based on this. And that's kind of the approach I took in the book. If you look at that early video, you'll get some of the more basics. I think it's like you want your tenon to be 1/3 of the thickness of the workpiece.
Not that one, the loose.
Nope.
No, not that one.
It's early. That was like
that
this
one?
year.
No.
Early.
Early. That one?
No. Oh my God. Tenons, anyone? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
early,
tenons.
like first year.
Oh.
Early. So there's that. Also, just Google this. I think Pop Woodworking, actually, probably every woodworking magazine website has an article on mortise and tenon dimensions, classic mortise and tenon dimensions, and you could find that information. Pretty tried and true sources as well. Okay.
You got another one?
My last one here is from Nathan Rearwerts. He says, I need help making a decision regarding purchasing a Powermatic bandsaw. I basically have a hobby shop that's slowly turning into a little bit more. My old bandsaw died, an unfortunate death, and I need to replace it. Haven't had the ability to resaw for some time, and I need to get back into that and cutting curves. Question is this. Is the extra money worth the step up to the PM1500 over the 14-inch saw? I've already run the proper electrical, so that's not an issue. And I always stuck to buying more than what you need today. Okay, please give your thoughts. I actually do think if you're going for one bandsaw, and you already know that resawing is something you're going to want to do quite a bit of, don't get the 14-inch saw. I think you need the bigger saw with more power, the ability to take a wider range of blades. You've got more resaw capacity on it. The 14-inch saw is fantastic, tuned up properly with the right blade. You absolutely can do resawing on that. But the way you're describing this, it sounds like you kind of know what you want. And I think if you already know you're going to be doing more resawing, go for the bigger machine. If it's in the budget, you got the power hookup right there. I got to encourage you to go for the more powerful, larger format tool in this case. I maintain 2 of them because I'm lazy, and there's times I want to cut curves, really tight curves.
Honest you are. I'm just lazy.
I am lazy. I want to cut tight curves, so I don't want to have to swap blades out for those different operations. So having 2 bandsaws really serves my needs a lot. But if I had to lose one and only had one bandsaw in the shop, it would be the PM1500. No doubt about it.
There you go.
Okay, that is all.
No, it's not all.
Of my
It's definitely not
pre-selected questions. Hey, you know what I got sitting right here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shoot.
You breaking it.
That wasn't supposed to break. Okay.
And what time did you get those questions?
Early. I told you, like 5:30. Hold on. I just dropped part of this. So this is a project I'm working on right now. Set of nesting tables. This is the larger of the 2. And it's kind of, I just dropped the circle, so it's not on there, but you see the circle right here? Mm-hmm. It kind of, if you look at it, it's almost like concentric circles. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of got a weird, neat little visual aspect to it, curved legs. This is the project I'm working on right now, and that is in the guild and starts next week. So if you're interested in that, the price is actually the lowest it's going to be right now, if anybody wants to jump in on that one. Just a little two table system.
Did you answer queries about the small bookcase?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nathan Rewerts. Hello, Mark.
Just answered that.
Oh, you just did? About the hobby?
Go to Chris's question.
Okay, Chris Calnassi. Mark, you're about due for a new shop move.
This is true.
No, seriously, though. I'm curious, now that you've been in the land of the snow for a few years with this shop, what is one of the must-have things in the new shop, aside from obvious like dust collection or climate control? Trying to think of everything for my new build. Floor mats.
Power?
Power. No, he's talking about the obvious. Was there anything that you added? I mean, these were new, but...
Well, I mean, a lot of the things I add, the creature comforts I add, or from a content production perspective.
Yeah.
So I add certain things for lighting that if you're just building furniture, you won't need. I've got sound absorption in here to cut down on the echo.
The little dilly bobber thingies that you pull down.
The little retractable power things.
Kids love those because they're automatic and they pull it and push the button.
Speakers. How about a sound system?
Yeah.
Jeez, this is awful. Excuse me. Speakers in the ceiling is really nice. Distributed audio throughout the shop is a nice thing. Windows.
Yeah.
Natural light is always a good thing. Natural light and fresh air. These are 2 things that I know in the Arizona shop, I definitely went very light on that, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have put a door in the back. So you remember that where the dust collector was all the way in the back of the shop?
Yeah.
So it would have been so nice if I just had a door in the back, and more windows would have been good too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you
Air filter.
Yeah, you utilize the space pretty well.
And depending on where you are, Chris, I don't know if it's possible, but one thing that I do miss, and again, seasonally, I don't know how often I would do that, especially here, but I really miss venting outside. Mm-hmm. Like, especially with the CNC running and as much MDF as we're cutting, it's really clogging up my filter. And again, there's the environmental responsibility thing, just blowing that stuff out into the environment.
The neighbors.
And your neighbors, whether that's the right thing to do or not, I can't answer that for you. But if you live in an area where you've got some room, you may consider possibly venting outside.
So the nesting table starts next week, right?
William Patrick Custom. See, my brain's not in it right now. Really good ideas coming from the chat room. Sub panel and outlets. Make sure you've got the proper amount of electricity to handle all the circuits that you're going to be putting in. And also overdo it on the outlets. That's always a good thing. Right now, I overdo it. I've got a 220 connection
you still got
here.
this.
Right. Well, that's because it's in the middle of the floor. But I got a 220 here that I'm never going to use because there's no 220 tools anywhere near this. But it's there because if I ever wanted to reconfigure, I've got an outlet here. I've never used 220 in that corner, but then the CNC suddenly came in, and now I'm using those outlets. So, just try to future-proof yourself.
I got a super chat from Jeff Collins. Mark, picked up the Makita track saw and love it. However, I find I have about 4 inches on either side of the track that I can't trim to the blade. Is there a good way to trim the track all the way to the ends? I don't know what, I know I said a bunch of words.
At the ends, they always kind of get frayed no matter what you do. The problem is, what he's talking about is you've got a little strip, like a rubber strip, that helps with the zero clearance and helps reduce tear out. So at the very start, in order to fully trim it, you've got about half of the saw off the track, and same thing on the other end, half the saw is off the track. So, it just kind of gets hit over time. What I would probably do, and I've never done this, but now that I'm thinking about how could I get around this? After you do a safe full cut all the way through, whatever's left is almost inconsequential. It doesn't really matter very much. I might then grab a straight edge once I do that first cut and a razor blade and go and cut it manually. And this way it doesn't get in the way. It should still be referencing, close to the rest of the actual cut, and it won't get frayed. Because part of the problem is once it starts to get frayed, the adhesive can start to let go, and that's where it starts to come off. So if you could, I'm processing liquids here.
Yeah, I know. I can talk.
No, it's okay. If you
I'll just suffer through it. You don't say a word.
If you cut that stuff away ahead of time, then maybe it won't contribute to the thing becoming, coming off of there. So.
Hey, Ian, the Barefoot Woodworker, who's in Australia. It's 2 a.m. He's in the chat.
Oh, nice.
Hi, Ian.
What are you doing up? Go to bed.
Maybe he doesn't want to go to bed.
Maybe he's a night owl.
Yeah. Remember when we used to stay up till like 2 a.m. playing World of Warcraft?
That never happened. It was a different lifetime.
Beautiful times. I thought about going into WoW, but then I was like, I can barely go into Animal Crossing right now.
I was listening to the instance, and Scott was saying something about different listeners that they have, and that some people still listen even though they don't play the show. And I was like, that's me.
Yeah.
I like to still, in my mind, pretend that I'm playing a game, even though I'm not.
Those fond memories.
That's it.
Good times when we had lots of free time.
Yep.
Alex Kilpatrick did a super chat. Could you discuss coping saw versus fret saw versus jeweler saw versus other options for clearing waste from dovetails?
How about the router?
Oh, I don't think that would work.
So what do I have here?
You got the little tippy tap chisels.
So I can tell you coping and fret, right? Coping big, fret small. Now jewelers, isn't that even smaller than a fret saw?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure. You don't need that. I mean, unless you're really trying to
Make teeny tiny.
I don't know, make a funny picture
Make a
that
teeny tiny
becomes a
little.
good meme about teeny tiny dovetails. But look, I mean, from there, I wonder if you guys can even see that blade, right? The fret saw blade is pretty tiny. So coping saw, fret saw usually is all I'm worried about. I don't know enough about the jeweler's saw to say anything about it. But generally speaking, coping saw is going to do like 90% of what you want to do. If you're getting into really tiny pins, you may have to do the fret saw.
I'm not sure what Jacob Reich is asking me. He says, have you ever thought about grabbing all the finished episodes and packaging them as a separate project? That way we have reference to finished strategies and not the entire project. I want to watch you finish the white oak, but I really don't need the nesting tables. Oh.
The problem is sometimes the finishing aspect. Well, I mean, in the guild, that is the one place, unlike the free site, where we do try to take the time to make it a full finishing lesson. I'm not going to say much about that because that's interesting. It's an interesting proposal.
And you could take a whole bunch of how you finished.
Yeah, at the end of each project, lump them together.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll think about that. I've never thought about it in those terms, so there might be some meat to bite into there.
That's interesting.
Because I initially was like, yeah, we can't do that. But I'm like, well, why can't we do that?
Yeah. I mean, you have, how many years have we been doing the guild now? 2009?
1 or 2.
But that's a lot of projects that have different finishing applications.
Different finish, different application, different wood species.
And the Adirondack is really interesting because you go back.
There's a follow-up.
There's a follow-up on that one.
Yeah, we've done that on a couple projects where we've revisited it and shown a recent update on it. I think we did that on the workbench too.
Jacob, I think you got something. All right. Hey, Darth Marcus is in the. Did I miss Nicole calling Mark a punk again?
When'd you call me a punk?
You are a punk.
I am, but when I don't know. I don't think you did it today.
I didn't do it today. I'm sure I'll do it eventually. I got a question from Dan, Plan D Woodworks. Super late question. Sorry. I just thought of it on the toilet this morning.
Oh, that's good. Your question smells like poop, Dan.
I realized that I only have twist bits in my shop, and I've been thinking that I should get a good set of brad points.
I agree.
Number one, do I need brad points?
Yep.
Number two, got any good suggestions for brands easily available in the U.S.? Lee Valley, maybe, or isn't Lee Valley Canadian though?
They're Canadian. Okay. But they've got warehouses in the U.S.
Yeah. Or is there a point of diminishing returns after?
At least I think they do. Don't they have a place in New York?
I don't know.
Anyway, go ahead.
Or because it's like Niagara Falls area, right?
Well, yeah, that's where the border is.
Niagara Falls.
That's where the border is.
Niagara Falls. Is there a point of diminishing returns after you spend a certain amount?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. There can be, and there's really expensive like titanium ones. Lee Valley's bits, I actually did a video on this one about premium brad point bits.
There's a bunch in Amazon.
Yeah, well, the thing is, those are the ones, a lot of those, I can't speak for them all, but most of the ones where you see a big set and it's pretty cheap, those are the ones that are going to burn. They're going to start to blue on you, and they wind up being toast after a while.
This one's $71, and it has pretty good ratings.
Fish brand. Yeah, that one looks pretty decent.
DeWalt has a set.
So I kind of got tired of buying these sets over and over and getting bits that burn, so I bought the ones from Lee Valley. They're expensive, but if you add how many times I've replaced certain bits, it was actually well worth it. So they've got those ones, I think they're titanium tipped or whatever, but they're really, really good quality. I personally think if you're into fine woodworking, if you are sometimes drilling visible holes, you are gonna want clean entrance and exits. And a brad point bit is a really good way to accomplish that. Also, a lot of times with very precise woodworking, we need to have pinpoint accuracy on where that drill is going. So if you have a crosshair, you want to be able to hit the center. That's hard to do with a twist bit. So the brad point bit has the spurs on the outside and that little point. That's how it gets its name, is that little point in the center. And you could really nail a very specific drill location. It's hard to do with any other kind of bit. So I do think they are maybe not a necessity, but they're pretty high up there for drilling operations and furniture.
So the chat room is saying that this fish brand they really like it.
It's not cheap, but it looks like you get a decent number of bits, and the price isn't.
I hear Ava screaming. I'll be right back.
The price isn't ridiculous. I'll grab it.
Okay.
So you don't drop it hard.
Okay.
The price isn't ridiculous at $70, so that looks like it could be a good, decent buy. Whoa. I'm trying not to make noise with her microphone, so forgive me. Okay. I'm just reading through questions here, and this is where you guys go, yeah, it's always better when Nicole's here. Okay, so Sil. Can you pass it on to Mark? Okay, yeah, I'll pass it to him. Now that he has 2 CNCs, is he planning on comparing them to the handheld Shaper Origin? That would be cool. I just lost it that quickly. I actually don't plan on keeping both of these. So the reason I have two CNCs is for demonstration purposes for the beginner CNC series that we were going to film. The shaper is not part of that. What I have is the Hoochie Hoochie, the Shape Oko. And the Hoochie Hoochie, the Shape Oko. Obviously, I'm going to keep the Powermatic, but the Shaper Origin is really cool. I don't plan on doing any kind of comparisons with that initially, but we'll see. I mean, because the thing is, like, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression that I'm going to be like the CNC guy now. Like, I got two and I spent the money on that, but as soon as that series is done, that beginner CNC series, probably going to get rid of the Shape Oko and sell it to someone locally who could really use it.
Are you doing Sly's question?
Yes. So,
okay. Slow.
So yeah, I'm trying to explain my logic behind what I'm keeping and what I'm not keeping. The Shaper Origin is interesting though, and maybe once I get a little bit more, comfortable with the language of CNC and understanding what it does and what it doesn't do, maybe there might be a reason why I would do that. So never say never.
Chris wants to know if you need to borrow a Shaper Origin. You want to borrow one? He's like,
no, if I really need it for something, I'll just buy it.
Yeah.
I
got a question here from Daniel Roberts. Have you used your walrus oil yet? Impressions.
Which one?
I think the one that
Furniture butter?
Yeah. No. Was that the one that polymerized? What's the polymerized one? The one you were like, I've been waiting for the
Oh, the furniture butter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's like an oil wax blend. Haven't used it on a piece of furniture. The thing about the walrus oil, it's when we talk about hard wax oils, right? We talk about Rubio, talk about Osmo. Those are in a different classification, right? Usually what they do, what I find, if we're going to simplify this as much as possible, they get you to the same place as a traditional oil and wax finish, or at least close to the same place, but they do it in like one coat, and it's a little bit better, right? If you do a traditional oil and wax, it's something that usually multiple coats over time, as things cure, you might eventually get it to the point that you've got the same level of water repellent, heat resistance, the moisture resistance, and also just the visual impact of it. Does it look good? You can get there eventually with a traditional oil and wax finish, but it takes longer. For instance, on my desk, I finished that with a traditional oil and wax, polymerized oil, and some beeswax, carnauba mixed together. And that finish, it looks good, it's okay, but it's not nearly as protective as things that I've finished with a single coat of Rubio or even Osmo. So where does this walrus oil furniture butter fit in? It's basically a very convenient single package of that oil wax combination, right? The more traditional one. I don't think it's going to necessarily compete on the same level as a Rubio or an Osmo. It's a simpler product, and even you might say a more natural product. So depending on what you're using it for, that might be attractive. If you don't want this other stuff on your cutting board, maybe this furniture butter is an option, or countertops that you don't want it on. Yeah,
it's like butter.
It's a personal preference sort of thing, but I would definitely classify it more as your traditional oil wax and not necessarily like a hard wax oil.
Chewy is in the chat room and said, for the first time in years, my wife sent me to the workshop.
Hey, Chewy, where's my dog food?
Am I being tested?
I've been waiting a week for it.
She wants you to make her something. And also probably to get out of her hair in the most lovingly way
It's a weird
possible.
time. It is a weird time. People are like, all right, you know what? You should go to the shop now because you're annoying the crap out of me.
And the dogs are like, I have had enough walks.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody around here is walking their dog like crazy because it's one of the things that is, makes it permissible. Yeah, is that the word? To actually go out of the house. So everyone's dogs are very well exercised these days.
Plan D Woodworks. The furniture butter right now, it looks like it's on sale for $20. Oh no, $30, $31.
Yeah.
So normally $33 though. I mean, it's $2 off.
Yeah. So that's the thing with the furniture butter. I don't want you to apply that to a piece of furniture and expect a miracle. It's going to be a very quick, simple, and very natural way to get an oil wax finish with less effort than it might be in a traditional way of doing it. It's a really nice, compact little system.
And you're supporting a small business too.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, overall, I like it, but I just want to make sure people understand we're talking about different, chemically, like different categories of finishes.
Let's see here. I got a question from Brian Thorpe. Having to sand to 220.
No, I mean it's Thorpe. I just said Thorpe.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't correcting you. I know it's hard to tell the difference. Can you imagine living with me?
I've had
Being
to
married
remind him
to
so
me?
many times that our kids do not get sarcasm.
Yes, they do.
No, they do not.
In certain aspects,
Some
they do.
Mateo is finally starting, but Ava, no.
Listen, ever since I had that little conversation at one of our Denver meetups
Mm-hmm.
with Michael, the therapist, I had a conversation about
Mike
sarcasm. I have laid off
Yeah.
of sarcasm.
I know, and I'm really proud of you.
I'm still a smartass.
Yeah.
And I still
proud of you.
make jokes.
Thank you, Mike.
But I do avoid, well, the thing is I also looked at it a little bit closer and evaluated what true sarcasm is
Yeah.
and what makes it bad for children and realized a lot of what I do is just being a smartass. It's not necessarily sarcasm. So, but this is something I've given a lot of thought to. I don't want to screw my kids up with being,
I
sarcastic all the
never
time.
knew what my dad was serious.
See Mateo in therapy when he gets older. It's always my dad's stupid dad jokes.
Anyway, back to Brian's
Sorry,
question.
there was a question.
Having to sand 220 on hard maple and getting rid of all the marks and having a problem getting gel stain to leave enough color. Would raising the grain help?
They say that raising the grain can help a little bit, but a lot of times what we do after we raise the grain is we sand it back to make sure it's still smooth. So there's a little happy medium there where you've the grain kind of becomes a little bit more thirsty in a sense. One of the things you can do is sand to a lower grit. You don't have to go as high. The higher you sand, the more you kind of close off the pores, you sort of burnish the surface to the point where it doesn't want to accept any stain. So going with a lighter sanding, maybe stop at 150, see what it looks like, 180 at the most. If you go any higher, again, you're going to have this, issue where it's just not going to take the stain in. Let me see the rest of the question.
Okay. Right there.
So, I guess, yeah, you could try that, but I think really see if you can get away with a lower grit sanding, and it will probably pull more color in. Also consider maybe different types of stain. Maybe the gel stain just isn't giving you the color you want. Maybe you want to look at some kind of dye, but then you got to worry about blotch. It's a whole thing with maple.
Steve, I was going to call him Steven.
Steve.
Speaking of Rubio and Osmo, can you compare the two and what the coverage is like? I'm planning a dining room table. Is the 350 milliliter enough for a tabletop like this?
I think it should be. A little bit goes a long way with both products. Comparing them is a little bit tricky because Osmo's product line is a little bit more vast. Like they've got a variety of things. So it depends on which Osmo product you're talking about. There's also not just different products, but different application methods. Some of these Osmo products can be, just sort of spread on like Rubio, spread on, distributed along the surface, buffed in, and then wiped off. That's one method. But there's also rollers that you can use to apply it. You can get a thick coating on there. You can't do that with Rubio. So the whole thing with Osmo is it just kind of depends on which product you're talking about and which application method you choose to use. I think Osmo is definitely the more versatile product because of that, because you can do different things, get a different visual impact. Our coffee table almost looks like it has a satin poly on it or a satin clear coat of something that's film forming, even though it's just Osmo, because I rolled it on and it actually does dry like that. So kind of depends on which one you're doing, but I do think the 350 should be enough for a tabletop. I mean, truly, the way, especially if you use a plastic spreader and really spread that around thin and then buff it in and spread it around, it's a little bit, goes a really long way. Like a liter of Rubio could probably last me through, I guess, depending on the size of the project, 6, 7, maybe 8 projects.
I got a question here from Ian. Since he's up at 2, I feel like I have to ask his question.
Let's service the man.
And we should probably wrap it up after this one.
Okay,
It's
sure.
already 10:18.
Let's do it.
How has the gaming table held up as
Great.
a dining table as well as a gaming table? I'm keen for a large, square, rectangular table as opposed to our useless small round one.
Well, I will say that we don't use it for gaming purposes as much as we might like to.
Yeah, I find that the mechanism to push the things
You're
out,
going to blame it on that, aren't you?
it's hard. It hurts my finger, and the one on the one end is broke, and the other one is like.
You got to man up a little bit.
Anyway, I do have a game in there.
Even if it was easy, I don't think we would use it that often because here's the problem. We actually do eat there every night.
Yeah.
So if you are gaming on there and you're constantly going in and out, it's a convenience thing. So a lot of these things, when we design them on paper, we go, oh, this would be perfect for this scenario. But in reality, when you have 2 kids and you're eating dinner there every night, it's a real pain in the butt to go to the table and be like, now I got to move. We have to do that anyway.
Move what?
If the tabletop is disassembled and there's just toys or Legos or a game in progress, it's a lot harder to eat. Like we complain when the table is sealed up and there's just toys on top, right? So for practical purposes, it's a little bit annoying to have to go back and forth.
I do want you to do what you did on the gaming coffee table, which is to do the little
pull-up things?
The little pull-up with the finger. That's perfect.
Yeah,
that's what I need.
It's a little tricky to do because it's plywood.
Yeah.
But I'll see what I can do.
That's what I want.
So yeah, I mean, it's held up great.
Yeah, I actually have
fine.
a game in there right now that we keep saying we're gonna play, but we haven't.
And we have played some games in there, but because we actually do eat there every night, it's not getting as much.
I think
use.
it's perfect for puzzles, Dungeons and Dragons, like long-term kind of games.
Yeah.
Versus like the quick little 20-minute game.
And we still have kids that are more like they're just now starting to understand board games.
Yeah.
And most of their games that they play are like these plastic big giant things or Lego that goes in there. I think as they get older and maybe we'll play longer term board games, maybe we'll have games in there that we just put the lid on and then, every night take it off and play.
Ian was saying, what about food on the top joints?
Has that really been an issue?
No. I get a wet washcloth and I wipe it down and then
I think once in a while, especially if you are opening it to play, you have more opportunity to wipe it down.
Yeah, you might want to.
You get a little crumb action.
Around when you take the things out. I'll just wipe it down that way.
And that's what I'm saying. Like if you actually go in there to play the games, you'll have more opportunities to just get a washcloth and wipe it down real quick. But it's not bad. It's not terrible. No. And thankfully, our kids are pretty good with spills. We haven't really had any spills to contend with there.
There's been spills on it, and I haven't had any problems. We also have that plexiglass on underneath it.
Yeah, protecting the game surface. All right, what
All
else?
right.
Anything? We're done?
Yep, I think we are done.
Did you want to pick a winner?
Oh, yeah, I already did. Number 5 in the questions.
Johnny 5.
Was Jeremy Long. Jeremy, I will message you right now, and you can pick your project.
Pick your project.
Speaking of projects.
Yes.
My call for shop teachers to reach out to me has worked.
Oh, really?
I've been getting email daily, multiples from shop teachers needing help with curriculum. Yeah. So if you would like
Are you getting any yeah, I'm a shop teacher?
No.
I don't know why they'd have to change the voice. But.
No.
I swear.
They're writing me from their EDU.
Right.
I'm getting
usually how we verify.
I've been getting a lot of Canadian shop teachers contacting me, as well as U.S. shop teachers. So we do have, because basically what I did was I opened up our scholarship program to the shop teachers. So if you would like to donate to the scholarship, I've basically run out of all the scholarship money, and so I'm just kind of juggling it right now. Yeah. So you can.
Got a question from Darth Marcus. Do woodworkers ever opt for long hair? There's a few. I've seen a few.
Long beards too.
Bob Lang at Pop Woodworking, or he used to be at Pop Woodworking. He, I don't think he does anymore. Maybe he still does. He used to have a big ponytail for the longest time. I don't know. Does he still have it?
I don't know.
I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
Who else has long hair? I mean, it's not as common, certainly, but I do think there are people who are just fond of having longer hair. It's certainly in the shop, it's a bit of a liability. You do have to be careful. Even if you got a big ponytail swinging around, there's just stuff spinning around in the shop. So I think anyone with long hair has to do a pretty good job of containing it to keep it safe.
Pretty.
A little bit of an occupational hazard there, but.
And
thinking about growing my hair long, Nicole. What do you think? I think I'd look pretty.
I have seen your high school pictures.
Look, once I get through the curly phase, it starts to weigh itself down, and then it only curls in ringlets at the end.
It's not a good
look.
look.
It's
I'm
fine.
Sorry.
It's fine. You're gonna like it, and it's gonna be awesome. All right.
All right.
What else we got? Anything? We're done?
I think we're
Well,
done.
okay. Richard makes a good point. I was just thinking about men.
Yeah.
He says lots of women, of course,
Yep.
women woodworkers have long hair.
It's called, I would twist and clip. So there you go.
Yeah.
If you're
Same
joining
problems.
us, if you are Patreon, we're just going to head on over to the after show just to have more one-on-one with you. Mm-hmm. That's really what the after show is. The chat slows down and we can talk to you.
And we catch all the questions. We
Yep.
have a chance to get more coffee.
There's
That's
no
what I
coffee
need.
left.
How dare you?
You were up at 5:30. You drank it all.
I did.
I had like a cup.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so I can grow. Morgan says I can grow my hair long, but I have to go back to the Flavor Saver. Okay. Look, it's a deal. I'll do it.
No, you're not doing it.
You want to see? Chewy wants me to go for the perm look. Here's the thing. I don't have to go for the perm look. It would kind of do it on its own.
So,
I have pretty, that's why I keep my hair short, because any longer than this, it starts to curl, and it looks really stupid.
So, Old Ohio Angler, I did schedule this show. It was my mistake. I had the video unlisted by accident.
Yep.
So
Wah, wah.
Sorry. We were like, what's going on? Why is it not?
Yeah, we started the show, and there were only 3 people here, and we realized it was unlisted.
Yeah.
So it's all good. We do our best.
Oh, it'll be fine next week.
What about women with long
Actually,
beards?
don't forget, we're doing Tuesday shows.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So-
good thinking.
If you want more of this, hey, come
Yeah, we're
hang
trying.
out.
We're at least for the time being, we're going to go 2 shows a week,
Yep.
just for funsies, since a lot of people are stuck home and maybe need something to make them laugh. I know I do, Nicole. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go. Maybe I'll do a Keurig thing and get a quick cup of coffee.
Ooh, a Keurig.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Stay safe.
I'll put a link in the show notes for the scholarship donation too.
Okay. Good job. Good job, everyone. Well done. We're talking to our crew, Nicole. Well done, everyone. There's no one there.